Over IRS Form 1040, payments and refundable credits, as well as the refund amount you owe section and the rest of the signatures that you would see on the back of your Form 1040. So this is the last in a series of videos where we've broken down the 2025 Form 1040 into 4 basic areas. So this is part of a playlist. If you want, you can go back to any of the other videos where we discuss the taxpayer information and the top part of the Form 1040. In another video, we calculate the income based on all the different sources of income. In our most recent video, we calculate the tax and credits. And now we're on the payments and refundable credits portion. So we'll make sure that we put links in the show notes to the playlist as well as individual links to the other Form 1040 videos. And if you want to break it down even further, step by step in our guidance, you can check out our comprehensive article. So, in our most recent video, we had calculated our tax bill from our fictional couple, John and Mary Doe. And so now we're going to figure out their refund or if they owe money back to the IRS. So on line 25, we're going to take a snapshot of the federal income tax withheld from various forms. So line 25A would be any items of income tax withheld on the form W-2. This would be in box 2 of your W-2. So let's just say that there was $1,000 withheld here. In line 25B, this would be any withheld income tax from a form 1099-R. That would be shown in box 4. If you also had any amounts withheld from dividend income, interest income, unemployment compensation, Social Security benefits, retirement benefits, those would be also in box 4 of the respective 1099 form. It could be box 6 of the form SSA 1099, or it would be box 10 of form RRB 1099 for those of you who receive retirement income from the railroad. So let's just say that there's $500 withheld here. Now in line 25C, we're going to talk about taxes that may have been withheld on other tax forms. So examples would include Form W-2G, that's the gambling income tax form. If you had additional Medicare tax withheld on IRS Form 8959, if there was withheld tax on a Schedule K-1, or for more, I guess, infrequent occurrences, any taxes withheld on Form 1042S, 8805, or 8288A. Those are all related to foreign income, so most taxpayers don't normally worry about that. So let's just say that that was another $500. So we're going to add these up in line 25D. And now we're going to take line 26 is any 2025 estimated tax payments as well as any amounts applied from a prior year return. So let's just say that that was another $500. If you made estimated tax payments with your former spouse in the tax year, then you would enter their Social Security number. There's a little bit of additional guidance. So if you were divorced and then remarried during the tax year, you would enter your present spouses in the space provided on the front of your Form 1040 or 1040-SR. So basically, your present spouse would have different information right here, but then your former spouse, their information would be here. Earned income, so line 27A, B, and C So the line 27A has to do with the earned income credit. So if you do have the earned income credit, you could put that there. Line 27B is for a clergyman who has qualifying income and has had it. You would check the box if you are a minister, member of a religious order who has not taken a vow of poverty, or a Christian Science practitioner, and you're filing Schedule SE, where the amount on line 2 of Schedule SE also includes an amount that was reported on line 1Z up above. So, right here. Basically, you're able to check this box down here, and then there are going to be instructions on how to report the amount of your earned income. So you would need to determine how much of your income from line 1Z is also reflected in Schedule SE. You would back that out, and there is a worksheet under the earned income credit instructions that you would need to complete. If you don't want to claim the EIC, or if you've been told in the EIC worksheet that you're not eligible, then you would check this box. So we're just going to check that box. Line 28 is the additional. So all of these are refundable tax credits. Basically, the reason they're here is because refundable tax credits can count as a tax payment, or if you start getting into refund territory, they can increase your refund. And as a result, they're highly scrutinized by the IRS. So be sure that you are actually eligible for the refund. Make sure that you have, or the credit, make sure that you have sufficient documentation and that you aren't taking what the IRS would consider to be a frivolous position. So the additional child tax credit, that would be from Schedule 8812. If you don't want to claim it, you can check there. Let's just say that we do have an additional child tax credit. The American Opportunity Credit, so the refundable portion is on line 8 of your Form 8863. We're going to put $500 for that. And then the refundable adoption credit, that's from IRS Form 8839, there is the refundable portion of the adoption credit. In this case, we did not adopt a child. And then Schedule 3, line 15, that contains any other refundable credits that were not listed here on the Form 1040. So we're going to add up all of these right here, lines 27A through line 31. We get 1,500. And now we're going to add line 25D, line 26, and line 32. And so we get $4,000. And then you have a decision to make, or your tax software has a decision to make. If this line is bigger than your tax bill on line 24, that means you have a refund. You paid more than what your tax bill was, so now you're going to get a refund, and you'll give the IRS instructions on how to do that. So let's go through this first, and then we'll swap the numbers out and see how that goes. So the amount that you overpaid is $500. You can have that refunded to you or applied to your next year's estimated tax. You can do a little bit of both. So if you have multiple accounts that you want your money to go to, there is a form for that. It's called IRS Form 8888, and that allows you to split your tax refund into, I believe, 4 different accounts. So you can do that if you'd like. It's pretty straightforward. According to the instructions, you can have your refund split and direct deposit it into up to 3 different accounts. However, you cannot have your refund deposited into more than one account if you file IRS Form 8379. That's the injured spouse allocation. So we're going to go ahead and just enter that we want the entire refund sent to us. We would then put in our routing number. And we would indicate whether this is a checking or a savings account. Of course, if you wanted to apply this amount to next year's tax, let's say we wanted a $200 refund, you can also make $300 go towards next year's tax. So just keep this in your records. A lot of people do forget that they pushed last year's tax refund into this year as an estimated tax payment. So you can do that. You absolutely do not have to. Let's imagine, for instance, that now 33, we actually were $500 short. So then we would simply carry the $500 down, and we would take a look to see if there was an estimated tax penalty. And the IRS gives you guidance on this. So you may owe a tax penalty if line 37 is at least $1,000 and it's more than 10% of the tax shown, meaning that you did not pay 90% or more in estimated tax throughout the year, or if you didn't pay enough estimated tax by any of the due dates. So this could happen even if you're due a refund. So generally speaking, the guidance is if the tax due is less than $1,000, then you probably don't need to calculate an estimated tax penalty. There is guidance in the instructions if you need to do that. Generally speaking, your tax software will automatically calculate that based on the entry dates of your estimated tax payments, as well as any, your mandatory withholdings. So be sure that if you think that you shouldn't be subject to an estimated tax penalty, but this somehow keeps calculating, go back and double check the entries for when you made any estimated tax payments and make sure that those are correct. So that's how you would handle either a refund or an amount owed to the IRS. So if you do owe this amount, generally most tax preparers will say, this is how much you owe to the IRS. Here are instructions on how you pay. You can pay electronically through the IRS website. That's generally how I would do it. You can also send a check if you want. Checks do tend to get lost in the mail, so keep that in mind, particularly during a rush season like tax season. If you have a check that's outstanding for more than a couple of weeks, that is reported quite often. So if you're the kind of person that does not want checks floating out there unnecessarily, you can pay by direct deposit through the IRS website, and that is free of charge. So let's go through the rest of this. This is relatively new field, third-party designee. So if you want to allow another person to discuss this with the IRS, you can put their contact information in here. And then, so you can complete this, and then there would be a 5-digit unique PIN. I've been told that you shouldn't put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we'll just put something else. So that would be the identity protection, or that would be the personal identification number that allows this person, could be your CPA, could be an attorney, it could be a family member, but allows them to discuss your return with the IRS. It does not allow, there are certain things that this does not allow. So basically, you are giving this person permission to give the IRS any missing information from your tax return. So if it's your accountant and the IRS says, hey, we're missing a tax form, they can send the tax form. They can call the IRS for more information about your return and what the status is. They can receive copies of notices or transcripts that are related to the return, and they can respond to certain IRS notices if they contain if they're concerning math errors or offsets or the return preparation. What you're not authorizing is receiving a refund check, additional obligations, more than your tax bill, and even then, they can't agree to anything that will increase your tax bill, and they can't otherwise represent you before the IRS unless you've given separate permission in the power of attorney form. This authorization automatically expires the following tax year. So if you're filing by April 26th, April, sorry, April 15th, 2026, this authorization would expire by April 15th, 2027. Signature field. So if you are married, both spouses will sign, date, put in your occupation, and then if you have an identity protection PIN, the 6-digit number, you would put that here. You would know that because you've received a CP01A notice, or you can also log into your IRS online account to pull down your PIN. If both spouses have a PIN, then they both have a separate PIN. So they can't use the same PIN, and the joint tax return will be rejected if both PINs are not properly entered in. And then if you have a paid tax preparer, they're going to complete the bottom of of this with their information. It's going to have their name, signature, date, PTIN. They'll check this if it's self-employed. They'll put their firm information in here. Be aware of someone that is not signing a tax return. This basically tells the IRS that there is a tax professional that was paid to prepare the return, and if there's any issues, then that person can be held to account. Whereas if they don't sign the return, the IRS does not know that a paid tax professional was involved. So. And if there's a math error or if there's some sort of tax error on your return, there could be a difference, right? So the IRS could take into consideration under the category of call it reasonable cause, which is a blanket term that covers a lot of subjective ground when it comes to penalties, interest, calculations, additional assessments. And so the IRS does take into consideration if you've used a tax preparer or a tax professional to give you tax advice. That doesn't mean that it will let you off the hook in all instances, but it is a consideration. So whenever determining reasonable cause for something like a late filing penalty, then the IRS will take into consideration anything like you gave your tax return to the preparer, but they had it for a couple of weeks, but they still did not file an extension on time, or they did not file the return on time. So that could be, again, the IRS holds blanket guidance saying that each taxpayer is individually responsible for their tax return. Of course, however, if you do have someone's signature here, particularly if they are a tax professional like an enrolled agent, a CPA, an attorney, then they do pay a little bit of attention to it, and that might make a difference. So that covers everything for the 2025 Form 1040. In this section, we covered the payments and refundable credits. As I mentioned, we'll put links in the show notes to all the relevant forms mentioned here. We'll also put links in the show notes to the other videos on Form 1040 and the playlist, so, as well as the article. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit us up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.